Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Deep Dive, or call it what you want. Call it National St. Patrick Hewitt presents From Bromley with love. But this is actually technically a deep dive episode. But I understand if you're watching this and you're thinking, Mash, this game was on Bank Holiday Monday. It's Saturday now. Both Bromley and Southend have got games that they've got to negotiate today. Bromley are on their, well, the players are already probably in Altrincham. I know the fans left at the time of recording. The fans left probably about an hour ago to go to Altrincham. I am not at that game today. Could not make it. Train strikes have scuppered me. So unfortunately, I will not be able to give you any kind of commentary from Altrincham away today. I should also add, as I quickly go on Google, that Southend are at home today to Kidderminster Harriers. So they obviously have a home tie today, and we'll see how they get on. But that notwithstanding, I have promised that this season, after every game, I'll do a bit of a deep dive, primarily looking at the game itself. But with the Southend one, and why I wasn't so bothered about leaving this one so late, is I kind of felt that given the situation at Southend, and for those of you that have already read The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that I wrote about that game, you'll notice that the last third of that article I left dedicated to just talking briefly about Southend, because yeah, okay, fantastic. Bromley got the win. And in terms of fantastic for Bromley, we finally got our first win of the season. But sometimes things are bigger than what the 3 points on the field. And certainly in the case of Southend, I think their situation is, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say it's a horrific situation for the fans. This has been going on for too long. And I just felt like I should shine, as an opposition fan, I should shine some light on it. It shouldn't just be up to Southend fans alone to kind of make their situation audible for the rest of football to take notice. So we'll briefly touch on the match, but primarily I wanted to talk about the Southend situation so that Bromley fans and anybody else who watches this just kind of gets a bit more of an understanding of what's actually going on. So with that notwithstanding, I'm pleased to say that my guest for today's show is Brian Jeeves, the chief sports reporter for the Yellow Advertiser, long-standing Southend fan as well. Brian covers, I would argue, pretty much all of Essex sports, but primarily the football teams, Essex Cricket Club as well. Brian was also, and this is why Brian was the perfect person to have on for the show, is also in Bromley Boys, the film. So when Brian comes on the screen, the task I set you all is go back and watch Bromley Boys and find where Brian was within the film as well. So Brian, I've known Brian for quite some time now. We've caught up at various different football games, at Bromley games, at Leighton Orient games. We caught up in many different guises over the last few years. And Brian is as legit as it comes when it comes to both, I guess, football within, I would say, Essex, East London, but also primarily, as like I say, Brian's ultimately a Southend fan, so it made sense to get Brian on. So anyways, without any further ado, let me bring Brian onto the show.
Morning, Matt.
Yes, Brian. How you doing?
Good. Nice sunny day here in Shoeburyness.
Excellent to have you on. First things first, actually, which game are you going to? Are you going to a game today?
Yeah, I'm at Southend today. I'm at Roots Hall for the game against Kidderminster, and we're trying to wipe out our minus points tally, which has been brought upon us amongst a lot of other things.
Indeed. Bromley have already played Kidderminster. We drew 0-0 at Kiddie a couple of weeks ago. Actually, we managed to hold on for 70 minutes with 10 men to get a 0-0 draw. And Kiddie, if you look at their results, have actually had a big difficulty scoring goals since their promotion. So I don't want to predict, but if Southend play to their obvious potential, you would assume, although you never know in the National League, you would assume that Southend would start the game as favourites, certainly. But Brian, you know what? Let's talk first and foremost, just briefly about the game, because this episode is more so about talking about Southend and what's going on at Southend. But just briefly looking back at that game on Bank Holiday Monday, Southend came into that game on the back of, minus the points deduction notwithstanding. I think I read prior to that game that if you looked at Southend's form, irrespective of the points, they're like they would be eighth in the league if the points deduction hadn't been put on them.
Yeah, we won 3 and lost 3. I think the points deduction. I don't think any club has ever been from the top to the bottom of a league as quickly as we have. So yeah, one for the Guinness Book of Records there. But
in terms of their season up to that Bromley game, though, how did you, from both perspectives, as a fan and as a sports reporter, did you go into that Bromley game thinking, yeah, Southend should be favourites here, or were you always worried about, given that they've only got a 16-man squad, there's a transfer embargo, were you worried about that bank holiday turnover from Friday to Monday and the potential of Southend being leggy going into that game?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I thought that, best case scenario was we got a point there. I think there's something else we touched upon at the game is Southend are notoriously poor on artificial pitches. I was talking to another fan the other day, and I can't actually remember us winning on one. So we did look leggy. I thought Bromley were a little bit sharper than us. They took their chances. Michael Cheeks are obviously a massive difference. And yeah, we've gone into the game. We've got the 16 players. We can't add to the squad. The turnaround is too quick. And what I will say is that the supporters and the local press here are unanimous. We're not, you can't get stuck into Kevin and the players when we lose. It's little he can do. They're doing their absolute best. And I think despite the fact over the years we've had some successful Southend teams, this particular one will stick in the memory of people because these guys have held out for us and they've stuck with it.
It was, the game for me was interesting because obviously I found Kevin Mayer's interview with, I think it was the official club channel at the end of it, and I know you would have spoken or been involved in terms of listening to Kevin as well at the end of the match. I found it quite interesting because Kev said he thought that Southend started too slow and they were a bit pedestrian and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but what I am saying is, until Harry Taylor's mistake, which obviously Louis Dennis pounced on and gave Bromley the lead, it wasn't like Bromley were playing well. Don't get me wrong. I think Bromley had started the better. But even up until half time, it wasn't a clear, like, sorry, Brown's back with us. It's all right, people. It wasn't like a clear Bromley are knocking Southend out here. It was a 1-0 and it was that tight. I don't think Southend at any point in the match were ever significantly out of the game, which is why I found Kev's comments just slightly, I don't know, I'm not critical. I'm not critical. I just find it slightly interesting just because I thought Southend were better than the comments he gave. Or is it the fact that Southend have played better than that this season, so he was disappointed in the context of that?
They've certainly played better than that. There's no question of that. I mean, the game against Oldham on the first day of the season when we absolutely blew them away 4-0 and played some lovely football, particularly in the latter stages where the game ran away from Oldham and we looked really on fire. But yeah, look, I think the turnaround is a big thing. I did think Southend looked leggy, and I did think that Bromley zipped the ball about a bit quicker than us and a bit slicker than us, and probably looked a little bit sharper. But like I said, if you've got that small squad, players pick up knocks on a Friday and they've got no time to recover. You can't even rotate them, and yeah, it was a slow performance. I wouldn't say it was a disappointing performance because it is what it is. When you've got what we've got, we haven't got anything else. It's just the way it is, But yeah, look, I think that Bromley they just looked sharper than us, particularly in the front areas, and we took our time getting going. Ironically, we come into the game after we went 2-0 down, and Noor Hussain got the goal. And then we had a couple of really big chances to try and snatch something from the game, but it didn't materialise. And look, as I said, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone was overly surprised. We'd have been happy with a point. We'd have been delighted with 3. But we are where we are. We understand that. We know that. We know why we're there. And for the meantime, the supporters will back Kevin and back the players. But obviously we long for better times.
Yeah, I think picking up on what you said there, that's the one area I do think I would completely agree in that. I think in the final third, and which is quite ironic because Bromley, up until that game against Southend, we haven't really fired per se in the final third. But I thought in the final third, Bromley looked the better team. They looked the more incisive team. They looked like not that they could score at will, but they look like they could go up a gear in the final third, so to speak, right?
Well,
Go on.
we touched on Michael Cheek. I mean, look,
Yeah.
wonderful player at this level. He's got goals in him, and as he's proved, took the goal really well. That's won the game. You know, just the sort of person that we could, you know, really do with at Southend, but we haven't got him, so we go with what we've got.
Where the 3 points for Bromley notwithstanding, this is Southend's second season now. Is it second? Yeah, second.
Second, yeah.
Yeah, second season in the National League.
Or is it third?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now.
They're all blending into one.
That's what I'm saying, because of everything post pandemic, it's hard to remember where everything is at. But the fundamental question I have around that is, do you think where do the Southend fan base as a whole, because we've had different teams come down to the National League, right, over the last few seasons, big clubs. Let's take Orient as an example, right? So Orient came down. They were, I wouldn't say, yeah, they were rubbish in the first season. They were down, finished somewhere around 14th, 13th, can't remember. Second season, obviously, Justin Edinburgh, rest in peace, got the right kind of blend. They went back up. Where are Southend in this mix in terms of, have the fan base, do you think, now accepted we're a National League club, or is everything under the cloud of what's going on outside? So there's you can't really assess what Southend are or where Southend can go until the external factors come to some kind of definitive conclusion.
Well, I think it's took its time, but I think a lot of fans now have accepted it. I think the big thing with Southend was, if you go back a few years to the Steve Tilson era, we had back-to-back promotions, got up to the Championship, albeit we was only there one season. We beat Manchester United in the Cup, and our fan base grew from like sort of 3,500, 4,000 to 10,000 in a very short space of time. And I think a lot of those new supporters saw us as a Championship side. Although, you know, through our history, our 118-year history, we've only spent, you know, a handful of seasons at that level. But, you know, we built that fan base. And as we've dropped down through the divisions, you've always seen the comments about if we can get back in the Championship, and that word potential. Well, you know, as you know, potential is only fulfilled by the people that run the football club. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think now there is a real understanding that, look, we are where we are. No one's got a divine right to be anywhere, whatever the size of the club or whatever the size of the support. I've been trying to get that across to people for a long time. It's, you know, we don't, we have to earn it, and you know, as much as you earn it on the pitch, you earn it off it as well. And I think, you know, Southend is one of them clubs where there's not a lot of respect for us in the football fraternity, purely because of, you know, the way the club has acted over the years. I think now, supporters from rival clubs that I speak to, where I've worked at, there's a fair bit of sympathy, because at the end of the day, when you mentioned Leyton Orient, they've been there themselves very, very recently, which was something we covered, and, you know, thankfully now they're in good hands. But yeah, look, we are where we are for a reason. There's no question about that, and I think our supporters, you know, 99.9% are now on board and realise we are here, and we're here for a reason.
With regards to the Southend squad, and again, we're slowly arching our way to the wider narrative. But with regards to the Southend squad, and because you and I, for those listening, Brian and I sat next to each other for the duration of the game, so we were going back and forth during the game, all friendly, going back and forth during the game as it was unfolding. But when I was looking at the Southend squad before the game, Brian, I was looking at going, well, it's not a bad National League team. And we have to remember that last season, Southend just failed to make the playoffs. Bromley came 7th, Southend came 8th. So we were the ones who actually sneaked in, so to speak. So I'll pick out some names like Noor Hussain, Cav Miley, Dan Mooney when he's on his business, Jack Bridge. Those are the 4. When I look at that Southend lineup, I immediately say, yeah, you know what, you're Football League players. To me, you are at least.
I'll throw Scott Morris into that.
Right, so I was going to say, who else would you throw in? So those 4 I know about, and I'm like, you are EFL minimum, League Two standard.
Yeah.
So do you look, even with the 16 that Southend can only use at the moment, is there still a bit of an expectation that, okay, obviously it's only 16, injuries, anything could happen, but at their best, would you say, yeah, Southend are a top 7 side in this league?
I think our starting 11-12 is okay. I think, as you said earlier, 8th, that's not a bad sort of area to look at and say, yeah, we're about there. We need more bodies in. But look, ultimately, and I think it's something we spoke about, if the pot of gold arrived and Southend United were taken over, and as ruthless as it sounds, if you're going to build a promotion team, you'd only probably keep those 4 or 5. And that's the harsh reality of football, I'm afraid to say. These boys have done us a tremendous turn, really have. But if you wanted to build a team that's going to win the league and get back into the Football League, I don't think it's good enough. Their heart and desire is second to none, absolutely second to none. But in terms of quality to get back into the league, we need additions, and we need them, pretty fast. Look, I think in terms of it's pointless talking about promotion, because, even if we were taken over today, the rebuild is going to be sizable. And you don't just get players in overnight. It's got to be right. But we've first of all, we've got to re-establish the football club as a place where players want to come, where good players trust. It's well documented about the players not being paid on time and things like that. Footballers want to know that they're like me and you. They're working men at the end of the day. They want to know that they're going to get their salaries on time. And so, Southend have got to show a little bit in that score if they're going to get these better players to come to Roots Hall.
I asked you a question, I think, I can't remember if it was first or second half. I said, Brian, how comes Southend haven't cashed in on a couple of these players, right? So, for example, back end of last season and certainly through pre-season, I was hearing a lot of chatter around Jack Bridge. Whether it was just inquiries, whether it was actual bids, even up till yesterday, I read, might be nonsense, but I read an article saying that someone had inquired about Harry Cardwell. I don't know if that's nonsense, don't know if there's truth in that, etc. Right? And this is how we kind of pivot now to the kind of outside circumstances. Is the financial situation, the court hearings, the this and the that, does that supersede? Because the average fan, layperson, will say, why don't Southend sell some of their players then? And that's the assets and so on and so forth. So first address that in terms of how comes no one's been sold, or in your opinion. And 2, is it bigger now than any one player being sold for any amount of money?
Oh yeah, it's far bigger than that, I think, now. Look, at the end of the day, we've got 30 days, something like that. If we get to the next court hearing and the bills haven't been paid, the judge at the High Court has said, this is it, we will wind you up. So that, these players can go for nothing in 30 days' time if they want to. I think in terms of Jack Bridge, it's his local club. He's been very, very loyal to us. We've heard rumours that Gillingham were looking at him, and I think Gillingham were present, weren't they, at Bromley, looking at
yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I think they were looking at AFC Wimbledon were represented as well. Look, if you've got a player that's good at this level, they're going to be looked at. Whether that's Southend, Bromley, whoever. The better or the bigger clubs, higher up clubs, are going to come looking for your players, and particularly if they think they can get them on the cheap. Yeah, Jack, I think, has been very loyal to Southend. He's I think you had him at Bromley on loan, didn't you? And he did particularly well.
Yeah, he was there for a season, and we wanted to keep him, but as you say, I think once Southend came in, as a Southend boy, it was a no-brainer to go back home, so to speak.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of rumours circulating the club about a takeover. I don't know, what's been told, what the players have been told. Hold fire. Let's see how this pans out. There's just no transparency whatsoever. We can all speculate, and the supporters are speculating. But if we get rid of these players, we can't replace them because we've been under a transfer embargo for a year.
Very good point. So let's start there then. The transfer embargo. And for everyone listening, please be mindful that we have to be careful. I say we, Brian, has to be careful. Has to be careful with what is and isn't said on this medium, because even now as we're recording, it's not like a lot of information is really out there, or all the information, or the information that is really needed is out there with regards to the situation at Southend. So Brian, I'll start here in terms of, I'm going to give you a layperson description of what I think I know, and then just take it from there. Southend were in court about a month ago now, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago. Yeah, about a month ago. They had been told by the National League, you have to make sure that you pay whatever bill is due by the time you come to court. If you do not, we're going to hit you minimum with a minus 10 points deduction, and it could get worse, right? So they go to court. They, as I understand it, they'd paid some of that bill, but quite a substantial amount of it was still outstanding. At said court hearing, Ron Martin and his associate said, "Oh, don't worry, there is a consortium that is going to buy the club." The judge said, if you come back to us on I think the date is literally about a month away. 4th October, yeah. So at the time of recording, it's literally a month. If you come back to us in 30 days and that bill is not paid, or I guess the club has not been bought and subsequently the bill has been paid, we will wind the club up. Based on the reports I read from that court hearing, the judge gave the club pretty much short shrift and essentially said, I would have wound it up today if I could, right? So it feels like, and I'm literally not trying to stick it on you, Brian, or Southend fans, because I'm just saying this how it feels like to an opposition fan. It feels like the club is literally now at the very last point it can be at. All of the stalling, all of the prevarication, all of the but I'm waiting for this stadium and the plot of land, all of the players not getting paid, staff not getting paid. It feels like it's coming to its end goal now, Brian. Is that a good point? Is that a reasonable? Yeah, is that a reasonable point?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I will say, which when I've seen supporters, and not just from our club but other clubs, refer to, oh, they are back in court, it's and them. I've always said, whoa, no, him.
Yeah, because
any football club that's run properly would not be in this situation. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I think, I could be wrong, I think the next court appearance in the High Court is our 20th. That's just unacceptable. That's totally unacceptable. The supporters it's a grave concern, a real concern that the football club is going to die before their eyes.
How, in a nutshell, how has it? I don't know. I don't know, Brian. How has it come to this though? Like,
there's been people that have been concerned about the ownership of the football club since the day he took over.
Right. Okay.
But it's fallen on deaf ears, and certainly in the early years, we had a couple of back-to-back promotions. We had some Wembley visits, and that clouds people. What's going on under the surface. They don't look at that. They just like, oh yeah, we've won a playoff final, or we've got to the championship. We've beaten Manchester United, and the bigger picture is what's been going on behind the scenes. There's plenty of stories that the players weren't getting paid on time long before this, and the staff and things like that. There's, it's just, as I said, it's completely unacceptable. There were people that had their concerns, including myself, and in certain quarters I was shouted down. I understand that. I know how football supporters work because I am one. At the end of the day, if your football club is winning, it clouds over everything else that's going on behind, and unfortunately that's where we are. I think a lot of the action that the supporters are taking now and the protest should have been going on a long time ago, but we are where we are, and now we've just got to hope that this consortium we're hearing about come through, and that we've got a brighter future for the football club.
I've got 4 key questions I just want to answer, and then we may bring this one to close. Question 1. I've been to Southend both seasons thus far. So I think the first one we lost 2-0 on a Tuesday night, if I remember rightly. Last season we won on Boxing Day. And I'll always remember this. So when Bromley went to Southend the first season, it was a big game. In this, like Southend to us was like, ex football league club have come down. Bromley's first visit to them in the league fixture, whatever, right? We get there now, and again, I'm not saying this to criticise, and how can I? I mean, I support Bromley. But Roots Hall looks like it's falling apart, Brian. It looks like it hasn't seen a lick of paint in a long old while. And if I've got that wrong, by all means, take me to task over it. But the reason I bring this point up is that was when it hit home to me. What's going on here? Why does this ground look like no one's done any refurbishment on it? Now, is that just the natural degradation of the ground, or do you think that speaks to some of the wider issues as well behind the club?
Oh, I think it speaks to the wider issues. I mean, we only got underway this season because a dedicated group of supporters went down and did a big tidy up ahead of the season. Yeah, look, I think he's put too much emphasis on us having a new stadium, which I've always thought is a bit of a pie in the sky thing. Roots Hall's been allowed to decay. Anything, your house, your garden shed, whatever, it will fall down if you don't look after it, won't you? And Roots Hall's just not been looked after at all. It's a shame. It's the first place I ever watched football with my dad, sort of nearly 50 years ago, and I've watched it just deteriorate over the years, and particularly in recent times. And it's beyond sad. It's beyond sad. It is a rustic ground. It's an original type of football ground. If you've got a few people in there, as you know, with the barreled roofs and everything else, you get a good atmosphere in there. But yeah, it's just been allowed to rot, and it's sad. It's unacceptable. As I said, the supporters rallied round and cleaned it up and got us able to stage the game against Oldham Athletic. But yeah, look, it saddens me. It really does. I turn up there and I look around, and it's like watching a relative sort of fade, if you like. It's a place where I've grown up watching my football, and to see it like it devastates me.
You mentioned the stadium. You said stadium and followed that with pie in the sky. So yeah, what is the deal there? If the club is sold, do you think it's still pie in the sky, or is that stadium never? Like, what is the deal with this so-called new stadium?
Look, we've been building a new stadium for as long as I can remember and never laid a brick. Even prior to Ron Martin's tenure, yeah, we had Vic Jobson was the chairman. He was going to build a new stadium. I seem to remember the Rubins in the mid '80s talked about moving the club to a new town, perhaps Basildon or somewhere like that. And Jobson obviously talked about that as well. Look, this isn't a new thing, but I think it's just a bit of a joke situation. I mean, we've all seen the plans for the stadium. It's just absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. I've always been an advocate of staying at Roots Hall and perhaps doing the place up, even if it means stand by stand rebuilding it or something like that. The bottom line of it is we really don't know, because the consortium that are interested in the club, we know very, very little about Justin Rees, who's the chap that's supposedly heading up, and we know none of the local businessmen, no one's been named, that are amongst this consortium. So we can't even speculate. What would they do if they did come in? Would they keep Roots Hall? Would the new ground be built? We just don't know. There's nothing there. There's no transparency.
I'm sorry to ask this question next, but I think we have to be realistic, right? Let's say in 30 days' time, Ron Martin's back in court. Argument's sake, club's wound up. Is anything in place for a Phoenix club to start? A la Bury, AFC Wimbledon, a la those kind of clubs? And I guess maybe the part two to that question is, do you think the club is going to get wound up? Do you think this consortium is going to come through? Like, what? Yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. I guess let's swap it round. Do you think this consortium is going to buy the club, whoever they may be? And then 2, if this doesn't materialize in 30 days' time, will we see an AFC Southend or something to that effect? That question, people, was so dramatic that Brian has indeed frozen as I asked the question, and probably I don't blame him. Brian will tell me that his phone is frozen, but in reality, he must be trying to trick me because he doesn't want to answer that question. But all jokes aside, I think there's some connectivity issues with Brian at the moment, so I will wait for him to come back on air. Bear with me, people. He's back. He's back.
Yeah.
Brian, I just joked to people that you deliberately ducked out of answering that question.
We'll go again. No, we'll go again. Yeah, look. At the end of the day, if we go to court in 30 days' time, I don't see us coming out of it. That's the harsh truth of it, and we've got to go with what we've got, which is not an awful lot. The evidence with what we've been provided with in recent times, we go back to court, I think we're done for. I'm led to believe that there is some sort of plan for an AFC Southend or something not too dissimilar. To be perfectly honest with you, I've always said I'm a Southend United supporter, and if it's gone, it's gone. That's the way it is. I've not really had an interest in following a Phoenix club or anything like that. I'd just take the memories and move on. But yeah, look, I'm really, really concerned about the future. We can only go with what we've got. We haven't got an awful lot. So then you start looking at what we have got, and what we have got is a string of court appearances, 10-point deduction, and unpaid bills. And that, to me, doesn't paint a pretty picture.
I was going to end it there and say thanks, Brian, but I reckon there's people listening to this who might be thinking the same thing. I'm just going to ask you, and this will be the last question. And I don't even know if you can answer it, Brian, but let's see. Try and give it your best shot if you can. If you want to kind of say, you know what, Mash, I can't go there. What is Ron Martin getting out of this, though? What is he? And none of us are in Ron Martin's head, so I guess I'm asking you based on just what you think. What is he getting out of this? And I guess I'm saying this in response to you saying you think the club is actually going to go in 30 days' time. And if it does, let's just say, God forbid, the club goes and is wound up in 30 days' time. What was Ron Martin getting out of this to extend for all this time to suddenly get to October, third season in the National League? Oh, that's it now. The club's done. Do you get why I'm asking that, Brian? Like what?
Oh yeah, look, and I think this is the problem. Is as you said, none of us are in Ron Martin's head. We just don't know. We literally do not know. Look, we know he's a property developer, so you can put 2 and 2 together, and whether that makes 4 or 5 is anybody's guess. But the bottom line of it is everybody of a Southend United persuasion are now of they don't believe that the club can continue with him at the helm. It's as simple as that. And as I said, the situation has escalated. Certainly in recent times, there's been protests outside his house. What I will say, he comes out and confronts people and tells people stuff. But everything seems to be contradicted within 5 minutes of him saying it. So, only Ron Martin knows what Ron Martin wants, and we don't. I'm afraid we can speculate, but we don't fully know.
Listen, Brian, that as needless to say, that hence why I asked you at the game. You've been fantastic. For those of you who don't know about Brian, now you do know about Brian. For those of you who have come to this via the link I put on Twitter, I would have linked to Brian on Twitter, so go follow Brian. For those of you who've come to this via Facebook, I would have linked to Brian through Facebook and the Yellow Advertiser, so go follow that, particularly if you are somebody who lives in East London, Essex, to follow Brian's work. If you're a cricket fan as well, maybe you're an Essex fan, go follow Brian. And that means as well, please do ultimately go follow Brian's work. It's absolutely fantastic. You can see just from this episode here how invaluable his contribution has been. Brian, every guest that comes on from another club, I always ask them the same 2 questions at the end, just for a bit of fun. Who will finish higher this season, Bromley or Southend?
Bromley.
Well, that was quick then. No, every other fan has tried to give me a. Okay, let me rephrase. Let me add the second one then. Head and heart. Do you think Southend will finish this season?
As it stands, no.
Brian, you may catch some pelters over this. You know, you may.
Oh, look,
you may...
I will be delighted to be proved wrong. Absolutely delighted to be proved wrong. You know, I think we've got 8 games between now and the 4th of October. I would swap all of those points to know that my football club still exists on the 5th of October.
No better way to end this episode. Listen, ladies and gents, I mean, from Bromley with love notwithstanding, the deep dive notwithstanding, fundamentally, like I say, all football fans, whenever we see another club in this kind of situation, this is when I do believe the phrase football family is actually deserved. And I think I speak for pretty much all Bromley fans when I say hopefully there is some light at the end of the tunnel for Southend United. I cannot remember when the return fixture is at Roots Hall this season, but I would hope, let me just look it up now. Southend versus Bromley. We will 16th of I thought it was going to be Christmas. We return to we go to Southend just before Christmas on the 16th of December. So I speak for all Bromley fans that I hope that game actually is a football game and that it's a game with league points on the line. Like I say, people, if you want to find out more, please do go and follow Brian on his various different handles. Go follow the Yellow Advertiser, and we wish the best for Southend United. Brian, last words to you. Thank you so much for coming on the deep dive today. No worries whatsoever. Ladies and gents, that's been another episode of the deep dive. You've been watching From Bromley with love. As ever, you can see below on the ticker tape. That's where you can go follow all the different handles. If you want to support the podcast, read the channel. Sorry, read the description below underneath the video. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Much appreciated. And I'll be back soon with some more content.